There's no question that sexual addiction is a legitimate psychiatric and medical diagnosis. Does that mean that we have labels in the books for it? We have many labels in the books for it. Some people call it hypersexuality. Some people call it sexual impulse disorder. Some people call it sexual disorder not otherwise specified. We have all kinds of fancy names for sex addiction. The problem is that there are so many moral judgments around people's sexual behavior and ethical judgments around people's sexual behavior that the psychiatric community is averse to getting into that debate about what kind of sex is good and what kind of sex is bad. It's sort of like, saying what is porn. Everyone has a different opinion. The issue, of course, is that if you're a sex addict, you're having sex in ways that are different than healthy people have sex. For the sex addict, sex is a driven, compulsive, out of control experience where they end up being in places and going to situations that they know will not be good for them, and yet they do it anyway. I often work with a sex addict who will say to himself, I'm just going to look at that magazine, but I'm not going to do anything more. And then he starts looking at the magazine and he says, well, maybe I'll look at a few porn sites, but I'm not going to call anybody. And then he starts looking at a few porn sites, and then he gets some phone numbers, and then he's calling prostitutes, and the next thing you know, he's going off and seeing the prostitute or having the affair. So part of the problem of being a sex addict is the inability to not take that next step. Sex addicts, once they start getting emotionally aroused in the idea of sex, so I'm not talking about genital arousal, I'm talking about emotional arousal. When sex addicts get involved with the excitement and fantasy of some sexual or romantic experience, they lose perspective on the other things that are important in their lives, like their families and their jobs and their health. And those people will throw everything aside for a sexual or romantic experience and later on hate themselves for it, or wish they hadn't done it, or especially if they get found out. I don't think, and I think it's important to note, I don't think sex addicts for the most part are bad people. If you think about addiction, if you think about heroin addiction, you might have someone who's a heroin addict who will take their kid's college fund to buy heroin. But when that person gets sober, they might work 3 jobs to put that money back to make sure those kids get to go to college. Because when you're an addict, your overriding obsession is to seek out and engage with and have access to that drug or behavior. So in the same way, an active sex addict may actually love and appreciate his family and loved ones, but he will betray them without a thought in the pursuit of his or her sexual high or romantic obsession. That doesn't make them a bad person, that makes them a person with a problem.